All right. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for a regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. I will call this meeting to order and ask you to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Before I look for approval of the agenda, I just want to add that Kim Rieger has indicated to me that the FEA would like to pull the grievance for tonight's board meeting. In an email exchange, she stated that the FEA felt that the email exchange between the FEA president and superintendent was going to be enough to move to the next level. However, they would like to restart this process and submit the grievance at a later time. So with that alteration, I will look for approval of tonight's agenda with the removal of the level 3 grievance from the business section. Jim.
I move adoption of the agenda with the removal of 7A.
We also have a HR addendum.
Oh, and the addition of an HR addendum.
Second.
Just up tonight. Okay, moved by Jim, seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We will move on to the recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. Upon conclusion from the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, which is Devin Sachinsky. Welcome.
Devin Stachinsky, HMR. Believe it or not, I only came with a couple of questions that aren't real hard-hitting this week, unlike my usual style. With the legislative session in full swing, there's been a lot of discussion, again, about the free lunch for the kids topic. And every time it comes up, I end up actually taking Jim's position on it, that it's just too expensive, $7 million, I'm sure 8 and change now with inflation. But I would like to ask any of you who campaigned on that particular topic, are you going to continue to remain silent on it? Or are you going to take up the banner because it's a hot issue in the legislature right now? Or are you only ever going to talk about it when it's time for re-election? Something else money related that was brought to my attention, and I have a question. For services that are billed for special ed students, it was told to me, and I have seen the receipt for it, that there are some cases where services are being billed incorrectly so that the district is actually getting more money for services that aren't actually being rendered. And I was told that it is impossible to get such a report for your student. Like, my student has a the words are escaping me, an IEP. So if I were to ask for a report, apparently that will not be provided by Fargo Public Schools. I have to go to DPI to get that, which I find strange if I want information about my student and the services they're getting. But I'm just curious what kind of oversight there is to make sure that we're billing those specific items appropriately for services actually rendered. And now for the last thing that I will bring up. I'm sure some of you saw in the paper that the state auditor has just got done with the Williston School District and found questionable accoutrement in their budget and financial statements. Some of them involving ESSER dollars, which the state doesn't really care where the money comes from. It's, is it being used accordingly as earmarked? And I know that there's an audit coming from the state auditor's office for the Bismarck School District. So I'm just curious if Fargo will preempt this and open their books to Josh Gallion and the state auditor's office along with their third-party audit and what have you. So I mean, if the district has nothing to hide, you just turn your books over to the state auditor. Otherwise, we'll petition and make you turn your books over. You could do it easy or do it hard. I'd prefer easy, especially if there's nothing to hide at Fargo. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Our next speaker this evening is Kristen Burgess. Welcome, Kristen.
I'm really nervous, so bear with me, please. If anyone noticed, I did not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. It wasn't out of disrespect or patriotic rights. I decided not to stand in solidarity of my 11-year-old special needs child. I'm here on behalf of my 11-year-old child who has an IEP for emotional disturbance. He has ADHD, anxiety, and PTSD, as well as selective mute. He is mute only in school. My son has been violated of his rights. According to your website, it states, section 67.I.03.01.02, principle I, commitment to the student. Number 3, shall protect the student from conditions detrimental to learning or to physiological or psychological well-being. For example, forcing a child to stand by tipping a chair over, knocking him to the floor because the substitute teacher found it just offensive that my child wasn't standing during the Pledge of Allegiance. The substitute teacher caused physiological and psychological harm, whether it was intended or not. And number 4, shall not engage in physical abuse of a student or sexual conduct with a student and shall report to the educational standards and practices board knowledge and such by an educator. Example, again, using physical force to force a child to stand instead of questioning or finding out why he's not standing or calling down to the office or sending him to the office. He could have written it down given the chance or the opportunity because he is nonverbal in school. She'd have known that if she did her due diligence by finding out if any students had IEPs or special accommodations. Again, she caused physical harm and mental harm, whether it was intended or not. And number 5, shall not harass, discriminate against, or grant discriminatory advantage to a student on the grounds of race, color, creed, sex, national origin, marital status, political or religious beliefs, physical or mental condition, family, social or cultural background, or sexual orientation, shall make a reasonable effort to assure the student is protected from harassment or discrimination on these grounds and may not engage in a course of conduct that would encourage a reasonable student to develop prejudice on these grounds. Example, again, harassed my child, my special needs child, who has PTSD and is mute. He's nonverbal in school. Attempting to force him to stand when he had special accommodations to not stand. Not making a reasonable effort to find out why the student had, or find out if any students had any IEPs or special accommodations. She took great offense to my child not standing and found it very disrespectful and treated the matter as such. Again, she caused harm whether intended or not. There was no suspension. With or without pay, I don't care. There was no suspension. We entrust educational professionals to care for our elders. We entrust educated professionals to care for our friends, family, and mental health facilities. We entrust the schools, educated professionals to care for our children and ensure safety and ensure proper disciplinary action is taken. This is all treated in the same manner as negligence. This, in my son's case, to me, it was not. There was, again, no suspension. None of us feel that that was fair by any means. All she got was a slap on the wrist, a letter in her file saying that if it happens again, then they will take disciplinary action. I was told that had she laid her hands on him, then they would have done a suspension. Why is that any different than forcing a child out of a chair to stand? I was also told that because the sub had subbed there for a long time and have never experienced any issues before, they felt they handled it was the best way to handle it. This is not only a slap to the face to me as his mother, but a slap in the face to both my children, other parents, and other potential victims. This also teaches the kids that it's okay for them to do what they did because they didn't physically touch them. This will cause long-term damage. I know this by personal experience. Therapists say the same thing. It's negligence, physical touch or not. She did not follow school procedure or standard. She is a long-term time teacher in the past. So she should know better and she should be treated as such. There was one witness that corroborated. Can I finish a little bit more next section of it? I just feel like there needs to be a suspension for further incidences if cases like this were to happen again. There needs to be some kind of suspension during investigation. And I've gone as far as going to some of the licensing board. I've reached out to DHS. I've attempted to file a police report and they said they couldn't do anything. My next step is to take this to the mayor or the governor, or their local state representatives until this changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you to all the audience members for joining us this evening. We will move on to our staff report section of the agenda. I would look to Board Member Robin Nelson for a legislative report.
Thank you. I guess it's just me tonight. As far as Governmental Affairs Committee, I will share the committee reports when we get into that section of the agenda. I would talk about a couple of bills that we are very involved with. One is 1491, and that is what was recently known or previously known as the Universal Lunch Bill. We did support that bill. It was amended from $89.5 million to $6 million to provide universal lunch to some of those that don't quite make the cut for qualifying for free and reduced or free lunch. Reduced is no longer a concept within the state as this bill stands right now. The notes that we provided were providing universal lunch has overwhelming support from the vast majority of constituents. This was a major topic during the last school board election, and every candidate supported it. Please prioritize spending public dollars to feed children over giving some of the tax breaks currently being considered. That bill will be heard, it was kind of backed up, that will be heard tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. The other bill that we are watching closely that happened this last week was 1532, and that is, for lack of a better term, a voucher bill relating to the establishment of educational reimbursement program and to provide an appropriation of $24 million. The statement that we provided was public dollars should not be afforded to private education institutions that are not required to follow public education laws. The Senate shut down another form of voucher bill, 6-0. And then our position was non-public education programs are not required to meet accountability standards, are not accountable to taxpayers, are able to refuse students based upon religious beliefs, and you can refer to some testimony there, and behavioral issues and special needs. A private school lobbyist testified that the dollars would flow directly to the non-public institution who is expected to lower their tuition proportionately. So what we are watching closely right now will be on the House floor tomorrow morning at 9:15. If you are bored, you can watch that testimony. Let's just put it that way. We have been very active and very vocal about some of the school lunch bills. And in fact, I have been told by some legislators that I need to back off because this is only the first period of 3 periods in a hockey game. So for anybody that says we are not involved, and particularly our Governmental Affairs Committee, all of us were recently elected. The school lunch bill is very important to them, and they have been very active. We are also preparing for a crossover info session, Wednesday, February 22nd. So far, 17 legislators have RSVP'd. That is a joint session with the West Fargo School District that will be held in Bismarck. And I believe the rest of my reports can happen in the report section. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Governmental Affairs Committee, to all of you for all the work you've been doing. We really appreciate it, representing the entire board. Next would be the FEA report. As I said, Kim Rieger indicated she will not be here, and I don't see anyone else representing the FEA. Dr. Gandhi is actually joining us via Zoom, but I believe the superintendent report will be presented by Dr. Gross and Dr. Eidness this evening.
Well, thank you very much. 2 meetings ago, we shared with you, or RSP shared with you, some projection data across our system in which we looked at target enrollment for our different buildings and then where we will be in the next 3 to 5 years. Based upon that information, we try to make some of our decisions when it comes to open enrollment and petition process. And for many years, the far south of our community, Davies High School and Discovery Middle School, have been closed to open enrollment. As we look at the data that we receive from the RSP report, we are suggesting that as of March 1st of this year, we would then close Ben Franklin and North High School to open enrollment. These would be for families outside of the Fargo Public Schools who would come in. We would certainly still welcome open enrollment, but that would be at Carl Ben Eielson and at South High School. Families who are already in the system, though, who are part of and have been accepted through open enrollment, we would honor that request and that their flow through our buildings, along with any siblings that they might have. But this would be for new families as we look at secondary schools. So that would be at Carl Ben Eielson and at South High School. And then at the elementary.
And at the elementary, we'd look at the feeder pattern for South and Carl Ben Eielson. And so it does change the elementaries. It used to be all North Side schools. And so that would change to be Clara Barton Hawthorne, Ed Clapp, Jefferson, Lewis and Clark, and Lincoln is where the open enrollments would be accepted.
Excellent, thank you both. Any questions by board members? Okay, anything else to report? All right, thank you so much. I will look for approval of our consent agenda. Jim?
I move adoption of the consent agenda with the addition of the HR addendum.
Second.
Seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. That moves us to our business agenda, or excuse me, business section of the agenda. Possible executive session. I would look to our negotiations chair if that's necessary.
There will be no need for an executive session this evening.
Okay. We'll all get on to our Valentine's Day, it sounds like. Wow, okay, that moves us to our board reports section. We will go around the room. Melissa, would you like to start us off this evening?
I'd be happy to start. I'm going to work chronologically from our last meeting. On January 26th, I had a liaison visit at Carl Ben Eielson with Principal Franklin. We walked around. I got to visit several classrooms. It was all in all a really great experience. It was pretty quiet. There were several field trips taking place that day, but I still got to see a lot of students, so that was really neat. The calendar committee started meeting last month, and we shared a working draft within our networks, and then that working draft was then approved this afternoon at our most recent meeting that we had. So that the next steps are that it's going to be shared with PTA and then shared with the board broadly, but that's the 24-25 calendar. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it. On February 1st, I had lunch with Kim Rieger, which was really great. It was nice to chat with her a little bit informally about FEA and upcoming negotiations. On February 3rd, I spent the morning at Ed Clapp and then the afternoon at Lincoln. And those, again, were really wonderful visits. I apologize for anybody who told me they knew my mom and I started crying. I was just having a weird day, but it was overall really fun to be there. And we have really remarkable elementary schools, and it was neat to see that firsthand. They were also doing the parachute. I don't know if anybody remembers the parachute from gym class at Lincoln, so that was really fantastic to watch too. Then I did the Zoom town hall that Dr. Gandhi puts on. This one was about reading and literacy. Really fantastic. If you haven't listened to the podcast Sold a Story, I would recommend that to anyone that's interested in reading. It's really fascinating. On February 12th, I went to the closing act of Guys and Dolls at Ben Franklin. We have really remarkable middle school students, and it was a great show. And then overlaying all of this is negotiations, and there's too many meetings to talk about, and Seth can kind of lead that charge. But we've been really hard at work, and we had a fantastic first session, I thought, where we just established our ground rules. I think it'll be a good season, I guess we could call it. So that's all I have.
Well, that was a lot. Can you repeat the name of the podcast? What was it?
Sure, it's called Sold a Story.
Okay. I'm excited to check that out. Thank you. Nemo.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to say the date, so we'll just read it. So I guess this does not apply to our school, but I was invited to attend lunch and learns at the high school in Moorheads, middle school and high school. I was able to talk to students that are ESLs and second language ESL, of course. Just overall, they just asking me question about, educations, empowerments and thing like that. So for me and my end, it's just like stay in school, trying to make sure that you ask question for your teachers and make sure that you do your homework. Then of course, if you needed help, there are definitely after school program or some of your teacher can just be able to help you out. Just do not be afraid of asking questions. So they were happy. So that's why I said it possibility does not apply, but that's my experience over there. I get to meet the superintendents too. He did came. I did attend the special board meeting that we had on January 31st. Communication, engagement, and advocacy. I was able to do my school liaison with Madison's, which is awesome. First day I came in, Happy New Year. So they're kind of like, where have you been? So that was fun. And then February 10th, I was able to attend Fargo CAS, a public health board of health, Fargo CAS Public Health Board of Health. I've been reappointed back in now, so for 2 years. So I went through so much intense of interview, and I had to send in my resume, and then I had to write letter of intent too, just so they show that, I'm interested, and I am interested. I attended the planning committee, government affair. Then I was able to go to Davies High School for concert. I guess we'll stop from there. Thank you.
Excellent, you guys. Seth?
On the 2nd and 3rd, I was in Bismarck for the NDSBA negotiations seminar. With them all, but so there, got you. Which was really good. We ended, Nikki and I ended up skipping an afternoon that was totally unrelated to us, and spent some time with the Capitol, and so that was probably more educational than the session we missed. So it was more geared towards administrators than board members. So and pretty much, yeah, negotiations is on. So several meetings since our last meeting, and just a brief, like Melissa said, we had our first meeting last Wednesday. We've decided that we are going to meet every Wednesday. As of now, we're scheduled every Wednesday until spring break, and so that makes this really busy, but it seems like everybody wants to get it done. So we're gonna do it and get it done, and I encourage anybody that is curious on how things are going to every Wednesday at 5 o'clock at Agassiz Cafeteria. You're more than welcome. So hope to see you there, and we'll just keep going. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to our entire negotiations committee for all the weekly meetings and the work you're doing. Okay, Robin, report number 2.
Thank you. I will start by saying I attended the governance committee meeting on February 6th, and then I have the privilege of participating at Lincoln next week on Read Across America. So I will be reading for 3 shifts to our elementary students. So I love that stuff. So I encourage board members when they're invited to do that. As far as Governmental Affairs Committee, I've made some media appearances. I attended the United Republican Committee, Politics on a Plate, that focused on school choice. I attended the Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo Chamber Public Policy Committee, and then Solidarity Saturday that talked about school lunches, school choice. So I'm very thankful that so many of those committees invite me to join. As far as the Governmental Affairs Committee, we did meet today at noon because we wanted to spend our entire Valentine's Day here at the school district. We reviewed, current legislation. We prepared for the joint information session with West Fargo, and our next meeting is Tuesday, March 7th at 7:30 a.m. I believe that's all. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Jim?
I too have been to a number of committee meetings and a special board meeting, all of which have been reported on. But I've also had 2 different SEEC planning sessions, and we have finalized a draft of our new, hopefully, governance structure going forward that will go to the board for approval at our next general board meeting. And just for the new board members, one of you or one of us will always be on the SEEC board. In the charter of the organization, Fargo School Board and West Fargo School Board each have a member permanently. The rest of the region is broken out, and that's because of student population. It's not because we're special. It's the makeup of the total students of the Southeast Education District. Each board member is responsible for so many students, and actually West Fargo's rep and Fargo's rep have only about 10 times more students to be responsible for than anybody else on the board, just because we're the cities where all the people live. So about a year from now, my hope is I'm gonna see who on this board really wants to serve on another board, and you're gonna get to start to shadow me, because I can't serve another term after next year on this board. I will be termed out, in my opinion, and I wrote that into the new policy governance manual. That's my report.
Godspeed, new board members. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Jim. Okay, Nikki.
Okay, we got a heads up on that. Okay, yes, several negotiations committee meetings, January 26th, January 31st, we had the special board meeting, February 1st, again, negotiation committee. The 2nd and the 3rd, we were in Bismarck for the North Dakota School Board's negotiation seminar. Seth is a bad influence, but it was only one session. And he said, I'm not going because it's not really related to us. I said, let me think about that. And so we went, we had lunch, and then we went, and we actually went to the floor of both houses. At the time, one was in recess and one wasn't, but we got to visit with people, and we got to ask a lot of questions, and we got to go a lot more in depth on both sides, and was very appreciative on that. On the House side, we actually really got in depth with one of the representatives, so I think it was time well spent. February 6th, governance. And that same day, I met with the Eagles leadership team, which is a group of teachers that represent the entire school building and the principal. So that was a very good, very informative meeting. On the 7th, we were here for the student cabinet meeting here at the district office. And in case anybody's wondering what the kids are talking about, they really had some meaty conversation. I won't go into all of it, but I've got a page and a half of notes, but just some highlights. They're talking about dress code questions, teachers having meetings during possible times that kids could be getting help because of the shorter day and because principals need to meet with the teachers too. Talking about in-school suspension, there was calendar discussion, Black History Month, and things of those sort. I mean, it was really, it was a slow start, but once they got going, wow, it was really a great conversation. So whoever's up next, expect the best, because it is. On the 8th, first negotiation meeting with the FEA. I'm very hopeful. We're all trying very hard to have a good negotiations season, if that's what we care to call it. That evening, I also had a virtual legislative convention meeting for PTA. We will be meeting with our senators here in March. So we're talking about our positions on various things at the national level. The 9th and 10th, negotiations committee again. We met at noon on the 9th, and then the 10th, we bumped CEA. Sorry about that, folks. We will get that rescheduled so that will be coming up. Tomorrow, two different things. If the blizzard doesn't hit, we are here for the FPS Foundation meeting right away in the morning. And because of negotiations, I was excited about it. The C3 Tech meeting is also tomorrow, but Seth and I both sit on the negotiations team, and then we were both supposed to be at that board, so I apologized and recused for tomorrow night. It's been a busy month.
Thank you. Greg?
I had a decidedly less busy month. I don't feel bad about playing hooky, Nikki, from that one session. I did not get to attend any of it because I was traveling. That was the start of my trip that lasted far longer than I expected it to due to airline issues. And I did finally return last night, so I am still working through all of my emails that I had been neglecting for almost 2 weeks now. I did miss the first negotiations session with the FEA, but I'm really hoping that will be the only one I miss the entire season. We're officially calling it season now. It's been said 3 times. But yeah, we had lots of negotiations committee meetings before I left, and I also had the Government Affairs Committee meeting this morning, and that is ramping up just as fast as the negotiation season. So lots of exciting stuff coming up in that regard.
Thank you, Greg. Katie?
Sure. So since our last meeting, I have been able to attend 2 of the C3 Tech Strategic Work Group meetings. And I will be at tomorrow's governing board meeting. And so I'll try to represent Fargo Public Schools because I know you two will be busy with negotiations. And speaking of negotiations, I'm not on that committee, but I have tried to attend a meeting from time to time just to have an idea of what is going on. And I know that committee takes a ton of work and is doing a ton of time and a ton of work, and I just appreciate being able to have a little insight on that. And then same as Nikki mentioned, I attended the student cabinet that was held here in this room, and I would agree that the
questions and comments from the students were incredibly insightful. And then I am on the Governmental Affairs Committee, so I have attended those meetings, but I've also done quite a bit of work for that committee outside of those actual meeting times, reading and writing testimony and watching different committee hearings and trying to get kind of a feel of where our legislators fit on some of those different bills. And I was also able to have lunch with Kim Rieger one day. That's what I got.
Yes, Nikki, one more thing.
Yep, just one more quick thing. Thank you to the members of the GAC team because they are very strong. The information has been flowing. Robin's been giving several updates, and I know people have participated in creating several of those updates as we've received them. And that is something that is a personal interest of mine. So while I'm not serving on the committee, I want to thank you for all you're doing for that. I know I get it's a ton, so thank you. Hats off to you guys.
Okay, that was like the most rich board reports I think we've ever had. Good job, team. Okay, I have a very brief president's report. As was stated, we had our special board meeting and governance has met. I also attended Davies choir concert, which is always fun. I just have a few odds and ends. Of one thing the district did receive congratulatory letters from NDDPI regarding Madison, Eagles, and Ed Clapp Elementary for being Title I high-performing schools, which is very cool. And there'll be more information regarding additional funds for that to be coming soon. And then we have seen a bit of a decline in our board member completion of homework for the last few meetings. So this is a friendly reminder to board members to please complete our assigned homework. We all know this is important in our role of self-monitoring our governing policies. And then Anne Marie sent out correspondence today, but June 6th has been chosen as the next board work session. So please reserve this day in your calendars. The timing and length of the day will be determined closer to the date and based on the number of our agenda items. But June 6th, based on the doodle poll, worked for everyone. Okay, oh, and one more thing. Officer Jacobson just informed me that tomorrow, February 15th, is National School Resource Officer Appreciation Day. So that is so cool. I hope the blizzard, well, I don't know. Maybe the best gift you could get is a day off if it's a blizzard, but thanks for all that you guys do. I think that's so cool that they recognize that as a National Day of Appreciation. We're very lucky to have you at our meeting, so thank you. I will affirm our next regular meeting date, which is February 28th. Happy Valentine's Day to all. It is 6:07. We are adjourned.